A quiet Friday evening settled over the city as soft rain began to fall, turning the streets glossy under the warm glow of streetlights. Inside a beautifully decorated restaurant called the Golden Willow, gentle piano music floated through the air while couples spoke in calm voices and waiters moved gracefully between tables. The place was known for celebrations, engagements, anniversaries, and nights people wanted to remember for the rest of their lives. At exactly 7 o'clock, a man named Daniel Carter stood outside the entrance for a moment before walking in. He paused under the soft light above the door and looked down at the small velvet box in his hand. Inside it was a simple silver bracelet, delicate but elegant. It wasn't flashy or expensive, but it meant something. Daniel smiled quietly to himself before slipping the box into the pocket of his jacket. Tonight was important. Tonight, he and his wife were celebrating 20 years of marriage. Daniel was in his mid-40s now, with calm brown eyes and the kind of gentle confidence that came from years of responsibility and love. Life had shaped him into someone steady and dependable. When he pushed open the restaurant door, the warm scent of food and candle wax wrapped around him. He glanced around the room until his eyes found the table near the tall window. Sitting there was Sophia Carter, his wife, the woman who had walked beside him for 2 decades. Sophia looked up just as Daniel approached. The moment their eyes met, her face lit up with a smile that felt both familiar and new at the same time. She wore a deep blue dress that moved softly as she stood up to greet him. Her hair rested lightly on her shoulders, and the candle on the table cast a warm glow across her face. Even after 20 years, Daniel felt the same quiet warmth in his chest when he looked at her. "You're late by 2 minutes." Sophia teased gently. Daniel pulled out her chair and smiled. "I wanted to make a dramatic entrance." Sophia laughed softly and sat back down while Daniel took the seat across from her. Outside the window, rain tapped lightly against the glass, creating a peaceful rhythm that made the evening feel almost magical. The restaurant was full but calm. The lights were dim, and every table held a small candle that flickered quietly. A waiter approached with 2 glasses of water and a polite smile. "Good evening. Happy anniversary." Daniel blinked in surprise. "How did you know?" Sophia raised an eyebrow and lifted the menu. "Maybe someone mentioned it when she made the reservation." Daniel chuckled. "Ah, so you planned everything." "Someone had to," Sophia replied playfully. They thanked the waiter and spent a moment looking over the menu. Though neither of them seemed in a hurry to order, the evening felt comfortable the way it often did between people who had known each other for a very long time. They didn't need to rush conversation or fill every silence. Even the quiet moments felt warm. "So," Daniel said after a moment, leaning back slightly, 20 years. Sophia nodded slowly, her eyes thoughtful. "It feels strange saying it out loud." Daniel tilted his head. "In a good way or a bad way?" "In a surprising way," she answered. "Sometimes it feels like it happened overnight, and sometimes it feels like we've lived 3 lifetimes together." Daniel laughed softly. Honestly, it might be both. They began talking about the early days of their relationship, remembering things they had almost forgotten. Daniel reminded her about their first apartment, a tiny place above a bakery that always smelled like fresh bread. Sophia laughed when she remembered how the pipes used to make loud noises every winter night. "You insisted the building was haunted." Daniel said. "I did not," Sophia protested. "You absolutely did." Sophia shook her head with a smile. "Fine, maybe I did once." They laughed together again, the kind of laughter that came from shared history. The waiter returned to take their order, and soon the table was filled with warm bread, a bottle of wine, and soft candlelight. Outside, the rain grew a little stronger, but it only made the restaurant feel more cozy. As the evening continued, their conversation shifted to their children. Their son Liam had recently started college, and their daughter Emily was finishing her final year of high school. "I still remember the day Liam learned to ride a bike," Daniel said. Sophia smiled fondly. "You ran beside him for half the street." "And when he realized I'd let go," Daniel added, "he immediately crashed into Mrs. Henderson's mailbox." Sophia laughed so suddenly that the couple at the next table glanced over with smiles. "Poor Mrs. Henderson," she said. "That mailbox never recovered." Daniel poured wine into their glasses, and they raised them together to surviving parenthood. Daniel said. Sophia tapped her glass lightly against his. And to somehow still liking each other after 20 years? They drank slowly, letting the warmth of the wine match the warmth of the evening. For a moment, they simply looked at each other across the table, and there was something quiet and meaningful in that look. Not the nervous excitement of young love, but the steady comfort of a bond that had grown stronger over time. After a while, Daniel reached into his jacket pocket. "I almost forgot something," he said. Sophia watched curiously as he placed the small velvet box on the table. Between them, her eyes widened slightly. "Daniel, go ahead," he said gently. Sophia opened the box slowly. And when she saw the bracelet inside, her expression softened with emotion. The silver chain caught the candlelight, shining quietly. "You remembered," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "You showed me that bracelet in a store window 6 months ago." Sophia blinked in surprise. "You remembered that?" "I remember everything you say," Daniel replied with a warm smile. Sophia slipped the bracelet onto her wrist and admired how it looked in the soft light. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. Daniel felt a small sense of pride, not because the gift was expensive, but because he knew it meant something to her. For a while, the evening continued peacefully. Their dinner arrived and they talked about travel plans, old friends, and funny stories from the past. The rain outside slowly turned the windows into blurred mirrors of city lights. It felt like the perfect anniversary. But then something small happened, so small that at first Daniel almost didn't notice it. The restaurant door opened. A gust of cool air moved through the room as a new guest stepped inside. Normally, this wouldn't mean anything. People entered and left restaurants all the time. But this time, Sophia suddenly stopped talking. Her fork paused halfway to her plate. Daniel looked up, confused. Sophia was staring toward the entrance. At first, Daniel assumed she had simply recognized someone. It was a small city, after all. Running into familiar faces wasn't unusual. But something about her expression felt different. The warmth in her eyes had faded, not replaced with fear, but with something else, something deeper. Daniel slowly turned his head to see who had entered the restaurant. A tall man in a gray suit stood near the host stand, speaking politely with the staff. He looked confident and relaxed, the kind of person used to moving through expensive places. There was nothing unusual about him. But when the man turned slightly toward the dining room, his eyes moved across the tables and then suddenly stopped. He had seen Sophia. For a moment, neither of them moved. Across the entire restaurant, across soft music and quiet conversation, the two of them simply looked at each other. Daniel turned back toward his wife. Sophia's face had gone very still. "Sophia?" he asked gently. She didn't answer right away. Her fingers tightened slightly. Around the edge of the table, Daniel followed her gaze again and noticed something important. The man had recognized her too, and now he was walking slowly in their direction. Daniel felt a strange feeling settle in his chest, not jealousy, not anger, just a quiet curiosity mixed with concern. Sophia rarely looked shaken. She was usually calm and confident. But now her expression held something like surprise, and maybe even old memories rising to the surface. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Do you know him?" he asked quietly. Sophia finally blinked, as if waking from a thought. "Yes," she said softly. The man continued, approaching their table, the candle between. Daniel and Sophia flickered slightly as he stopped beside them. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then the man gave a polite smile. "Hello, Sophia," he said. And in that single moment, Daniel realized something important. This evening, this peaceful anniversary dinner they had planned so carefully was about to become far more complicated than either of them expected. The moment the man stopped at their table, the air seemed to shift. Daniel Carter straightened in his chair, unsure whether he should stand or stay seated. He looked at Sophia, whose hands were resting lightly on the table, trembling just enough for him to notice. The man's eyes were calm but carried something unspoken, as though he had stepped out of the past into a place he didn't fully belong anymore. Daniel's mind raced. He didn't recognize the man immediately, but something about Sophia's expression told him this was someone significant, someone tied to a chapter of her life he had never seen. The man's smile was polite, controlled, almost practiced. Yet behind it, Daniel sensed familiarity that neither he nor Sophia could ignore. The man introduced himself as Marcus Hale. His voice was smooth and deep, confident yet gentle. Daniel nodded politely, keeping his hand on the edge of the table to steady himself. Sophia's eyes widened slightly. The tension in her body was subtle but unmistakable. 20 years of marriage had given Daniel an intuition for these moments. He could sense emotions even when they weren't spoken. And right now something was unfolding that he had never anticipated. Not in 1,000 quiet dinners together. Marcus glanced at Daniel with a faint smile, extending a hand. Daniel shook it, noting the firm grip, the calm composure, and the strange weight of history behind it. Marcus explained that he was only in town for a few days, mentioning business and coincidental plans. Yet Daniel could feel the weight of the past pressing into the present. Marcus had an air of familiarity with Sophia, and the way she looked at him, hesitant, uncertain, conflicted, spoke volumes. It was more than recognition. It was history, unspoken feelings, memories that had never fully faded. Daniel's curiosity mixed with a strange sense of protectiveness. He wanted to understand, yet he also wanted to protect the peace of this evening. This carefully curated anniversary night. For a brief moment, the restaurant seemed smaller. The soft piano music, the flickering candlelight, and the distant sound of rain outside faded into the background. All that remained was Sophia, Daniel, and Marcus, 3 people connected by threads that only time and circumstance could explain. Daniel noticed subtle details. The way Sophia's hand brushed against the tablecloth, slight hesitation in her voice, the way her eyes darted toward Marcus and then quickly back to him. He realized this was more than a simple encounter. This was history intersecting with the present, a collision of lives that had moved forward separately but never truly disconnected. Marcus spoke to Sophia, his voice calm and measured. "It's been a long time," he said. There was a pause, almost ceremonial, as though the years between them needed to be acknowledged. Sophia nodded, swallowing softly. Daniel watched her, noticing the small tremor in her jaw, the brief flash of vulnerability in her eyes. It was not fear, not regret, not even sadness. It was recognition of a life she had once lived, a love she had once known, and a choice she had made. Marcus's presence stirred something dormant, and Daniel understood that this moment was significant, not for what had been, but for what it reminded them all about love, choices, and the paths their lives had taken. Marcus's words were careful, deliberate. He complimented their anniversary, noting how rare and special 20 years of marriage was. Sophia said nothing, her hands tightening around the edge of the tablecloth, and Daniel answered for her, his voice calm but firm. "Yes, we are." There was a quiet power in his tone, a subtle reassurance that this moment, while unexpected, would not undermine the life they had built together. Yet inside, Daniel's mind was racing. He tried to piece together who Marcus had been to Sophia, what memories lingered, and how this chance encounter might affect her and them. The waiter came briefly, refilling their water glasses, but the atmosphere remained heavy with unspoken tension. Daniel observed Sophia closely. She seemed to struggle between her polite composure and the surge of old feelings that Marcus's presence had awakened. Daniel knew he needed to remain patient, to let her navigate this without pressure, without judgment. The years had taught him that love was not about controlling the other person's past, but about understanding and accepting it. And in this quiet, elegant restaurant, Daniel felt both the fragility and resilience of his marriage at the same time. Marcus spoke again, this time more personally, asking about Sophia's life over the years. Daniel could see the subtle acknowledgement that Marcus carried with him, the understanding that he had once held a place in her heart. Sophia responded carefully, measuring her words, aware of Daniel's presence, aware of the life she now lived. She was polite but firm, speaking with honesty yet shielding Daniel from unnecessary pain. Daniel admired her composure, realizing that part of love was observing someone's courage in facing their own history while maintaining respect for the present. The conversation between Marcus and Sophia unfolded like a quiet dance. Marcus's movements and words were calm and non-threatening, yet Daniel could sense the magnetism that had once existed. Sophia's eyes occasionally flickered with memories, tiny fleeting images of the past that she had tucked away. Daniel noticed every subtle sign, the slight pause in her laughter, the half-smile that seemed nostalgic, the quiet way her hand brushed against her bracelet. Each gesture told a story he had never been told. A story that was no longer about choice, but about memory. Daniel's mind wandered briefly to their early years. He remembered how Sophia had fallen in love with him not suddenly, not overwhelmingly, but steadily, as if fate had slowly guided her. And now, in this candlelit restaurant, that past had arrived unexpectedly. He felt a strange mixture of protectiveness and curiosity. Not jealousy, not anger, but the need to understand what Marcus meant to her. What history lingered, and what might still influence the present. He knew that love was not about erasing the past, but about embracing it, understanding it, and choosing to continue together despite it. Marcus finally took his leave, moving to another table. Daniel observed the slight nods exchanged between him and Sophia, recognizing a silent acknowledgement of shared history. The air between Daniel and Sophia shifted. The tension slowly melted into reflection, the unspoken weight of past and present merging quietly into understanding. Sophia exhaled softly, her fingers relaxing on the table. Daniel reached across and held her hand. The warmth of her skin grounded him, reminded him that the life they shared was real, tangible, and built on decades of love, choices, and trust. For a few minutes, they sat quietly, sipping wine, watching the rain blur the city lights outside the window. Daniel noticed how the flickering candle mirrored the quiet uncertainties of life, sometimes steady, sometimes wavering, but always present. The encounter with Marcus had stirred emotions, yes, but it had also reminded Daniel of something profound: the depth of commitment, the resilience of love, and the importance of facing the past without fear. Sophia finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. "He was my first love," she admitted. Daniel nodded slightly, squeezing her hand, encouraging her to continue. "It's strange," she said, "to see someone who was once everything to you standing there, and realize that life has taken you on a different path." Daniel listened, silent but attentive, understanding that this was a moment of honesty and reflection. "Not of conflict," Sophia continued, recalling the years with Marcus, not in longing, not in regret, but in acknowledgement. She spoke of dreams, plans, and the life they had imagined together. Daniel noticed the careful balance in her words. She was telling her story while protecting the present, maintaining the sanctity of what they shared. The bracelet on her wrist gleamed under the candlelight, a small symbol of the continuity of their relationship amidst the sudden stirrings of history. Daniel responded quietly. "It's okay," he said. "We all have chapters that shaped who we are, but we also have today, here, together." Sophia looked at him, relief washing over her face, mingled with gratitude. The presence of Marcus had brought memories to the surface, yes, but Daniel's quiet understanding had allowed Sophia to process them without guilt, without fear, without disrupting the fragile peace of their anniversary evening. For the next hour, Daniel and Sophia talked in soft tones, reflecting on their life together, acknowledging the past without dwelling on it. The restaurant around them resumed its gentle rhythm, other diners unaware of the emotional depth of the table near the window. Outside, the rain continued to fall, a quiet companion to their conversation, a reminder of the unpredictability of life and love. Daniel realized that the night though interrupted by the unexpected appearance of Marcus, had gained a new layer of meaning. It was no longer just an anniversary dinner, was a testament to resilience, to trust, to the power of choosing each other again and again. Every glance, every touch, every word spoken quietly across the table reinforced the connection that had carried them through 20 years. As the evening progressed, Daniel and Sophia shared laughter, remembered joys, and even acknowledged the small regrets and what-ifs that life inevitably brought. But instead of tension, there was understanding. Instead of fear, there was reassurance. Instead of distraction, there was focus on the life they had built together. Sophia sat quietly for a moment after Marcus returned to his table. The flickering candle between her and Daniel seemed to cast shadows across the table. Shadows that mirrored the sudden stirrings of old memories in her mind. Daniel watched her carefully, sensing that something unspoken was building inside her. He didn't press, didn't ask, because he had learned over 20 years of marriage that some truths needed their own time to be told. But the tension in her posture, the way her fingers lightly brushed the edge of the tablecloth, spoke volumes. Daniel could feel the heartbeat of their shared past mingling with the present. A reminder that love was not only about the here and now, but also about everything that had come before it. Finally, Sophia looked down at the bracelet Daniel had given her. The silver gleamed softly in the candlelight, catching her eye in a way that seemed to anchor her back to the present. She took a deep breath, exhaling slowly, as if preparing to tell a story that had been quietly resting in her heart for years. Daniel. She began softly, her voice steady but thoughtful. There's something I need to tell you about Marcus. Daniel leaned forward slightly, giving her his full attention, his hand brushing hers lightly. The connection between them was still there, strong and steady. And it gave Sophia the courage to continue. He was my first love, she admitted quietly. Daniel nodded, letting the words settle between them. They weren't angry, they weren't bitter, just honest. Sophia continued, explaining that before she met Daniel, Marcus had been someone she had dreamed of spending her life with. They had plans, hopes, and ambitions that seemed so solid at the time. For a brief period, she truly believed that he was the person she would grow old with. Daniel listened quietly, absorbing every word. Understanding that the past was not a threat, but a part of her story that had shaped the woman he loved. Sophia spoke of the dreams they had shared. They had imagined a life together, moving to a new city, starting a career, even having children. Life, however, had other plans. Marcus had moved for work, the distance had grown, and slowly the plans faded. The silence between them had grown over time until eventually the connection had disappeared, leaving only memories. Sophia's voice carried neither regret nor bitterness. It was matter of fact. A recounting of history, a chapter that had ended naturally. Daniel felt a sense of calm wash over him as he realized that the past was not an enemy. It was simply part of the journey that had led them to this very moment. As she spoke, Daniel noticed small details in her expression, the way her eyes softened when she mentioned Marcus, the brief smile that lingered when she recalled a happy memory, the pause when she thought about choices she had made. He understood that the past had shaped her, had molded her into the person he loved today, and that the love they shared now was stronger because of the paths they had both traveled. He squeezed her hand gently, giving her silent reassurance that he was listening, that he accepted every part of her story. Sophia's eyes met Daniel's, searching for a reaction, a sign that he might feel threatened or hurt. But Daniel simply smiled softly, a quiet warmth in his gaze that told her everything she needed to know. "Thank you for telling me," he said simply. "It means a lot that you can share that with me." Sophia nodded, relief washing over her face. The honesty between them created a quiet intimacy, a deeper bond that had been strengthened by facing the past together rather than letting it linger unspoken. She continued, recounting how she had felt when Marcus appeared tonight. "It was strange," she admitted, "to see someone who was once everything to me, standing there, knowing so much of my past. But it wasn't about wanting him back. It was about remembering who I was and realizing how far I've come." Daniel listened intently, understanding that her reflection was not a threat to their relationship, but rather a reaffirmation of her love for him. Every word she spoke reminded him that love was not static. It was dynamic, constantly shaped by experiences, choices, and growth. Sophia explained how the encounter had stirred memories of young love, of excitement and possibility, but also of uncertainty and imperfection. Seeing Marcus reminded her of the life she could have had, but also highlighted the life she did have, a life with Daniel. A life built on shared history, trust, and enduring affection. Daniel's heart swelled with emotion as he realized that her reflections on the past only reinforced the strength of their bond. It was not the absence of past love that made their relationship strong. It was the conscious choice to continue choosing each other. Day after day, year after year, Daniel reached across the table, holding Sophia's hands firmly but gently. "We all have chapters in our lives," he said. "Some are long, some are short, some are full of dreams that never came true. But those chapters don't take away from what we have now. They make us who we are, and I'm grateful for every part of your story, every part of you." Sophia's eyes glistened with quiet tears, but she smiled, feeling understood, valued, and loved. The conversation had transformed the tension into connection, the uncertainty into reassurance. She spoke about how the brief interaction with Marcus had reminded her of the choices she had made, choices that had led her to Daniel, choices that had built the family, the home, and the shared life they now cherished. She admitted that for a moment she had felt a flicker of old emotion, a reminder of what could have been, but quickly realized that it was fleeting and irrelevant compared to the reality of their life together. Daniel nodded, recognizing the maturity, honesty, and self-awareness in her words. The past had surfaced, but it had not shaken the foundation of their love. As the evening progressed, Daniel and Sophia continued to talk, their conversation flowing naturally from the past to the present and then to the future. They spoke about their children, their hopes, and even the little dreams they had postponed over the years. Each word, each glance reinforced the connection that had carried them through 2 decades. The restaurant around them resumed its gentle rhythm piano music. Soft laughter, the clinking of glasses, but at their table, there was a quiet intensity, a recognition of the depth and resilience of their love. Sophia reflected on how encountering Marcus had made her realize the uniqueness of her relationship with Daniel. She noted the comfort, security, and warmth that came from years of shared experiences. She acknowledged that the past could hold memories of love and longing. But those memories had only clarified for her the value of what they had built together. Daniel smiled, feeling a renewed sense of gratitude for the life they shared. The woman beside him thanked the strength of their bond. The waiter brought desserts, mall chocolate, tarts with delicate decorations. They ate slowly, savoring not just the food but the quiet intimacy of the moment. Outside, the rain had slowed to a soft drizzle, the city lights shimmering through the drops on the window pane. Daniel noticed the peaceful expression on Sophia's face, the soft glow in her eyes, and he felt a surge of emotion. The night had taken an unexpected turn, but it had only deepened their understanding of each other, their love, and the way the past could coexist with the present. Sophia reached across the table and held Daniel's hand firmly. "I'm glad we talked about this," she said. "I was scared at first, but now I feel lighter. I feel like we've been reminded of what matters." Daniel nodded, squeezing her hand gently, letting her know that he felt the same. The honesty they shared had created a quiet intimacy, a sense of security, and a deep emotional connection that no unexpected encounter could shake. They spent the next hour reflecting on their life together, sharing memories and talking about future plans. There was laughter, gentle teasing, and moments of quiet reflection. Daniel realized that love was not about never encountering challenges or surprises. It was about navigating them together, with patience, understanding, and a shared commitment to each other. The appearance of Marcus had introduced tension, yes, but it had also highlighted the strength of their relationship, revealing the depth of trust, patience, and love that had grown over 20 years. Sophia expressed gratitude for the life they had built, acknowledging that while the past could evoke nostalgia, it did not diminish the present. Daniel listened carefully, absorbing every word, every nuance, every subtle expression that revealed her heart. The conversation allowed both of them to reaffirm their commitment, to recognize the strength of their bond, and to appreciate the choices that had brought them to this moment. As the night drew to a close, they finished their dessert and sat quietly, holding hands across the table. The restaurant had emptied slightly, the gentle hum of conversation and music continuing around them. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening and reflective. Daniel looked at Sophia, noticing the calm and peace in her expression, and realized that this night unexpected twists and all had brought them closer, reinforcing their connection and reminding them of the power of love, trust, and honesty. Finally, they stood to leave, Daniel taking Sophia's hand as they walked toward the exit. The cool air outside was refreshing, carrying the scent of rain and the quiet promise of a new day. Daniel placed his arm gently around Sophia, feeling her warmth and presence beside him. "Ready for the next 20 years?" he asked softly. Sophia laughed, a sound full of relief, joy, and love. "With you, always," she said.